So I wanted to talk about spiritual warfare and about how, like, logically what that is. Like, what are people talking about when they go like, a narcissist that does black magic, or a narcissist that does, it doesn't even have to be a narcissist. It could be, anyone that does shirk, right? Like for the Ummah, um, they know that Satan and demons are real, and they refer to them as shaitan and jinn. In Christianity, we say Satan and demons, because a lot of the Abrahamic faiths, we have, which ironically there's three, we have really, like, some of it is loosely, but then a lot of it is very similar in people who do black magic and stuff like that. So what is black magic, right? So black magic, a good example of it would be psychological warfare. So what is psychological warfare? Well, I'll tell you a story, and I actually saw it on like an Instagram post like years ago, and it was about how in Vietnam, soldiers in the United States, they would set up speakers in the jungle, and through these speakers, they were hoping that the Viet Cong who were resisting them, would be able to hear what's coming out of these speakers. And what was coming out of the speakers was like, things that you would hear at in Edmonton, they have that during Halloween, they have that haunted, walk or whatever, and they'll have speakers, and it's like creepy stuff, and it's like voice of ghosts, like whispering and like creepy laughing and stuff. So what they did is that they studied Vietnamese culture, that they believe that the spirits of their deceased loved ones and stuff, they wander into the forest and into the jungle, and that, at nighttime you would be able to hear them like interacting in the environment. And so the United States, they ended up employing this kind of a thing, and it's interesting because it's demonic. It's demonic. They weren't, it's not the voice of angels singing that they're playing inside of the woods, inside of the jungle at night. They want to scare you. They want to put fear into you, because that's the weapon. If they can't see you in order to put a bullet in you, they want you to put a bullet into yourself, because they can't do it, right? Like, they can't find a physical way to do it. And so the next way is psychological, is to enter your mind. So how does this relate to like a street level narcissist, or like, a street level black magic practitioner, right? Well, it's to get into your mind. It's to put fear in you, so that if they go like, oh, there's a hex on you, or, I'm putting curses on you, because they'll always try to let you know. And then in your head, you'll be like, oh, like, that's ridiculous. But then now every time you pull out of your driveway, you'll be like, what if? What if? And then the more you give into that, and you start thinking about constant dangers and danger around every corner and stuff like that, that's when that's how the magic ends up coming to work, because you end up doing things that make that come true. Like, you yourself, and that's the aspect of psychological warfare. And so someone who does black magic, it's interesting because in them is so much capacity to do evil. And usually it's a narcissist, right? Someone who has narcissistic personality disorder. And so these kind of people, they want to have control. They want to have control over you. And, we know that in the church, everyone learns about this in school during the Dark Ages, Middle Ages, when the Catholic Church was in charge of the government. They would tell you, you need to come and confess. You need to come and tell us your sins. You need to come and do this. And this was their way of of a community literally like self-governing itself, so that nothing is hidden, because you're under an invisible threat. You're constantly under this invisible threat that, oh, we're watching you, and oh, we're gonna know, we're gonna know if you do something and don't come and tell us. But the reality is they don't. And that's why they need to employ these kinds of scare tactics into you. It's because they can't do it themselves. So, how does this relate to the spiritual warfare? Well, because that's just a psychological warfare. But the spiritual aspect is when we look at, the trivium and how everything starts as a thought, is they're literally, it's creepy. It's creepy to think this, but there's human beings that walk around and they think just complete evil. Like inside of their mind, oh, this guy's dumb. He's dumb. He doesn't know. And you'll see it in churches too. Some pastors, some priests inside of Catholic churches. These are people who don't really believe in what they're trying to tell you, right? They just think, oh, these people are stupid. They can't take care of themselves. So they're looking for this thing that doesn't exist. So I might as well, I deserve to do this because I'm smart enough to know that they're dumb and I'm smart. And this is how it's going to be. And so, and even sheikhs, even you'll see it in masjid, you'll see, it doesn't matter where you go, because a narcissist is a mental disorder. And so that kind of a mental disorder, it exists everywhere. It exists everywhere. It'll be in the temple. It'll be in Gurdwara. It'll be everywhere. Everywhere. You'll have people where you're like, you don't really believe what you're saying. And I know, and you can recognize in these people that, your intentions are not what you're claiming it to be. You're not I feel like your words are coming from an evil place, even though they sound, nice in the physical, what you're speaking, but your actions aren't lining up. Something's off. You get that vibe where something's not right. So, how to fight back against this, right, is, when you actually read the scripture in the Bible, it literally tells you, do not be afraid. And when you take not being afraid out of it, and you're literally not afraid, so you go well, I think that's a lie. And you know what? I think that you're a narcissist. And I don't believe that you have the good intention of anyone around you. And you actually check up. For my kind of understanding is you step. I ain't afraid to step to you, right? Who do you think you are? And so this kind of thing, but that's because of mistakes that I've made in my life. But having that, what? What do you think? And you push up on people. These people, that's what they're afraid of. That's what they're afraid of, is that you're not going to be afraid. And you'll actually press up on them and be like, what's up? And so, and because they don't want to take it there. That's why they're attacking you psychologically. That's why they're trying to use black magic and stuff like that, and trying to tell lies about you, smear campaigns, and trying to organize other people to come against you, because they can't do it themselves. They need other people. Whereas if you live a righteous life, and you're a good person and you want good for people, you can be alone against 100 people and not be afraid, because you know that I'm standing for what's right. My feet are firmly planted into the ground. Whereas those people, they pick up and move all the time. You know what I mean? They can't stay in one place very long, because eventually they expose themselves. Right? And then people go that's ugly. And then they know that it's ugly, right? But that's who they really are. And they can't hide it, because eventually they speak such a good game, but then their actions can't follow. And so that's why when you have an understanding of the trivium and you apply it to this kind of stuff, and you go well, it sounds good when you're up on, and when you're up in the church and you're preaching, this message of love and all this stuff. But then as soon as one thing happens that threatens your authority, or someone starts shining too brightly, now all of a sudden, well, they're disqualified because of this. Now they can't come to church because of this. Oh, well, they're not even that great. They owe it to this, or they owe it to that. They have to pick you apart. They have to redirect it, because they can't lose their grip. Because for them, it's all about power. And so it's all about control. But to bring it back, because I don't want to go off course. I just want to keep it on this. To actually bring it back into focus here, the reason that you don't want to get angry and like to actually like live in an angry state over people doing this kind of evil, or like, you know, telling lies, or, you know, do like sending threat, like whatever the case may be, right? Because a lot of times it's threats trying to get into your head. But the reason you don't actually want to like entice in that, or like even think about it, like literally just move on. And it sounds difficult, but eventually you'll get to a place where like you're mentally, you build this mental fortitude where next thing you know, like, oh, that's what God was doing. That's why God allowed, you know, this stuff to happen. And you have to remember that vengeance belongs to God. And so there's nothing you can do to someone that God isn't going to do 10 times better. Right? And justly, you know what I mean? Not just because you think that they deserve it, but he's going to repay everyone exactly what they deserve, including righteous people, like for the good that you do. He's going to repay you exactly what you're owed for that. And you don't even do it for a reward. And so you end up becoming more blessed. But the reason you don't want to start repaying evil for evil is because then all of a sudden inside of your mind, your thoughts become evil. And that's what they want. It's because, you know, they want to get you out of character. Like they want you to start plotting this, plotting that, plotting this, plotting that, because then you're, you know, it's almost like an infection of a disease, because now it's spread to you. Whereas, you know, if you do kindness and you start like doing good things, that spreads. That's all of a sudden starts spreading. Like like this guy, he you know, he donates all the time or something, and then people go like, oh, well, you know, I should donate. And so it spreads. But just like how goodness spreads, evil spreads the same way. And, you know, you can see that in, I guess the prime example would be Israel and Gaza. You know, kill all the Jews because they're killing so many Palestinians. But then you're not realizing that you're both becoming evil. You're both becoming evil. Because the same terrorists who plot the January or whatever, October, whatever, that attack are now being targeted by other people who plot the same thing. Who plot that same kind of event. Like they live for that. Like, you know what I mean? And so now, like, that's what I'm saying. Like, what you're putting out, you're bringing back in, because other people are going to be like, oh, so here's another player. Here's another player on the field. And so, like, that's what I mean. You don't want to be known in that kind of space. You want to be invisible to that place. Where you actually want to be known is you would rather be known for like good things, for like good deeds, and like you didn't repay evil for evil, because that's not going to catch the attention of other evil people that aren't involved, because they're going to be like, oh, like whatever. And instead they're going to put a highlight onto this person, onto this other dude, and go like, oh, like you think you're big and bad. You think you're big and bad. And that's where you see in school, like bullies, they'll prey on weaker bullies. Like they'll prey on them. Like, you know what I mean? And so like, cause it's easy for them. Right? And that's what I mean. They're always looking for easy, the path of least resistance. That's why it always leads to the drain. That's why their life is always a wreck. It's because they're taking the path of least resistance. And if you follow rainwater long enough, it leads to the sewer. So you don't want to be like that. You don't want to be like that. And so, you know, you don't want to get infected with that evil way of thinking, because then all of a sudden your whole day is just consumed with, you know, hate for this other person. And like, that's how they get control over your life, because you're constantly thinking about them. What are they up to? What are they doing? Just like they are. Just like they are. And so that's how Satan's kingdom, Shaitan, you know, it spreads in the dunya, like in the world. Like, this is how that happens. This is how, like, he creates more and more servants of evil people. And so many of them are hurt themselves. You know what I mean? Like, they didn't start out as like this evil, you know, serial killer. You know, when you ask them their story, it's like, no, like, my brothers grew up in this, or like my whatever. And that's what happens, is that pain ends up falling upon someone else and then changes them. And so the spirit jumps. The demons jump from person to person, right? And so next thing you know, you have the same demons. And you can explain it logically through psychological ways, but the actual like origin of it is spiritual, because it's invisible. It comes from the inside and then comes out into the world. The evil's actually behind the person who's having the thoughts, because where are the thoughts coming from? Like if you sit down and you're like, oh, I just got my $1 million idea. Where did that thought come from? Well, it came from, a good place. It came from, oh, I'm trying to become wealthy and healthy and, happiness and joy and success. So it comes from like a good place, but it can be evil, but it came from mostly a good place. Like I would say it came from God. Whereas a person who goes, this is how I get away with it. This is how I'm going to get them. This is how I'm going to do this. That is obviously a communication with an evil spirit, because those ideas are popping in your mind from somewhere unseen. You can't see the formation of a thought. You just see the thought. You see what I'm saying? And so when you recognize that, which you should, because you'll find it within yourself. Like don't think you're too high and mighty to have a capacity to do evil things, because it's within every single one of us to do it. But it's also within every single one of us to choose not to do it, and to choose to actually be a good person, and to have a job, and to work for your living, and to earn your, earn it through hard work and blood, sweat, and tears, and, enduring, suffering caused by other people, because eventually you're going to have kids and all they're going to do is stress your life out. Like, you know what I mean? Like, dude, that's just how it goes. And so how are you going to be able to deal with the mistakes that a child is going to make that you might not have made when you were a kid? And you're like, I don't understand. Like, how could you have made this mistake? Like that kind of stuff. But that's how your parents felt about you. Like, because a lot of times they didn't make those mistakes. And so they're thinking like, well, how could you do it? But they still loved you, right? They might have, they might have told, let you know you were wrong. But once 5 o'clock came, if we were lucky, not everyone was given this, these kind of parents. But, once supper came, like, are you hungry? Like, you know what I mean? Like supper's ready. Like, you know what I mean? There was still that love. There was still that like drive to nurture. And if that wasn't there for you, then that's your calling, is that you're going to do that for your children. You're going to be the person that you wish you had. And that's a reward. That's its own thing, because you're the first one to have done it, right? Like in your family. And that's so important, because that's all that matters. That's all that matters is who you choose to be, not who you were, if we look on a graph, statistically speaking, he's over here. No. It's a choice. And them putting that chart in front of you is them hoping that you live up to that expectation that they have set for you. That's the crystal ball. That's the psychic that you go see. Oh, your life this is what's going to happen to you. None of that was going to happen to you. They're just putting that onto you because they have their own sick beliefs that we know nothing about. You know what I mean? That behind closed doors, they were traumatized their entire life. And so they don't feel empathy for people. And so they're like, well, if they're dumb enough to come in here, if I'm hurting, then you should hurt too. Why do you get to be happy and I have to be sad because my life was bad and your life was good? Who do you think that's what's inside of these people. That's what's inside of them. And it doesn't matter, you're Muslim, Hindu, Christian, Catholic, whatever your beliefs are, Sikh, doesn't matter. That kind of trauma and that kind of pain and stuff, it's not unique to like one race of people, one religion, one culture. Like these people have always existed. Like, you know what I mean? And it's a blight on everyone's culture, but it starts with you. Because you have a choice in your thoughts to say, no, I'm not going to do that. and you'll have to suffer. You'll have to suffer